Hi there, I'm Angela Brown and this is Ask a House Cleaner. This is a show where you get to ask a house cleaning question and I get to help you find an answer. Now today's question comes from a homeowner who is cleaning out her refrigerator and her cupboards, and she wants to know what is the deal with food expiration dates. I see that sometimes it will say guaranteed fresh, or it will say sell by dates, or expired by dates, or it will say pack dates. What do all of those mean, and do I have to throw out the food after those dates? That is an awesome question, and the answer is this. Now it's going to surprise you, but the expired dates on food, the food expiration dates, are completely voluntary. I know, right? You thought they were mandatory, but they're not. They're voluntary. The only required by law food expiration dates are on baby infant formula and some baby foods. And there are some states that will require stores to pull dairy items off the shelves after the expired by date. That's it. Everything else is voluntary and is designed by food manufacturers to sell more foods, for you to rotate foods more quickly. But if you were to eat some food that's a little bit left over and it's past the food expiration date, you're probably still okay. But let's walk through some of those terms so that you know what the terms mean and you know what to look for. Okay, so the expired by date, that is all it means. It expires by this date. If you eat the food after this date, you're on your own. That's all it means. If you open up a can of salad dressing that's completely sealed, that's been in your pantry, or a container of ketchup or relish or something like that that's highly processed and it's in an airtight container, if you open it up and you smell it and you taste it and it tastes fine and the expiration date is a little bit past, hey, you're on your own. It's probably perfectly good. Okay, so then the next date is guaranteed fresh. Now, guaranteed fresh, you see on a lot of bakery items. These will be breads and pastries and donuts and cakes and cupcakes and cookies and things like that. The bakery is guaranteeing them fresh until this specific date. After that date, you can certainly throw them in the freezer and thaw them out and they taste wonderful, right? Or they might be a little bit stale if you don't refrigerate them and they just sit on your cupboard for a few days, but they're still perfectly good. They're not going to fall apart. They're not going to make you sick or anything. They just may not be as fresh. So they are guaranteed fresh until that day. Okay, so another one is pack by. What does that mean? Packed by, packed on a certain date. That's usually for canned goods and non-perishable items. That lets everybody know when they were packed. So if you have a canned good and it's 2 or 3 years past the expiration date, if you've taken care of those canned goods, they'll probably still fine. Now the exception is if you see a bulging can. If a can is bulging, no matter what the expiration date is, it needs to be tossed. And so if you'll tap the top of the lid, if it pops in and out, it's bulging and air has gotten into that somehow, it's not good. Do not eat it. If the lid has a bulge to it, do not eat it. Okay, but how do you take care of canned goods? A lot of people will put canned goods out in their garage, and as long as the garage is like 50 to 70 degrees, that's a perfect temperature to store canned goods. But if there's a lot of direct sunlight and it's hot and 100 degrees outside and humidity, you probably don't want to store your canned goods inside your garage because that can affect the quality even though it's in a can. So you want to keep your canned goods in some kind of a storage vault or a pantry or a closed off area where you can protect that storage. All right, so another one is sell by date. What does that mean? The sell by date is for the grocers, and that tells the grocer when to rotate the stock that's on the grocery store shelves. It doesn't mean anything. It's for the grocer. Sell by this certain date. If it's on a perishable item like, let's say, eggs, they want to sell this by a certain date, but eggs are good for 3 or 5 weeks after you have expired that sell by date. Milk, for example, has a sell by date. After that date, your milk is probably still good for a week. After the sell by date on your meats and vegetables, your vegetables will, you just have to kind of keep your eye on them. If it's in a warm kitchen and they're not being refrigerated, it's going to speed up the life of that. And it's going to start to rot and it's going to start to mold. And then, of course, not so good. So keep your eye on the vegetables, but the meat, a couple days and then you can put it inside the freezer and it will last indefinitely, just long periods of time. So if you're not going to eat the meat immediately, take it home and put it in the freezer so that it will last a longer period of time. Okay, what about born date? A born date is usually for beer and wine, and that will tell you the date that it was manufactured. And so it's really interesting and important that you know what the born date is. Beer is different than wine. Wine, the longer the born date, the better the wine. Beer is a little bit opposite. After about 3 months, the microorganisms inside the beer start to break down a little bit. And so you want newer beer, older wine. Now, beer, a lot of times, will come in darker containers. These are brown jugs, gold jugs, green jugs, glass that's dark so that the sun can't get in and break those organisms down. And so you want to be really careful about buying beer in a clear bottle because the sun can break down those microorganisms. Anyway, okay, so the best if used by. The best if used by date you're going to find on, I don't know, like cheeses and yogurts and things like that. And I don't really know why. It's freshest if eaten by this date, but cheese, for example, is already mold. And so if you see mold on your cheese, you just cut the corner of it off and you can still eat it. I mean, it's perfectly fine. That's what cheese is. And yogurt is already a culture. And so if it goes beyond that best if used by date, it's still a culture. I mean, that's all it will ever be. And so even if it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, sometimes if you eat it, it will still taste fine. So it comes down to, are you going to recycle your food regularly because there's a date on it? Or are you just going to do the sniff test and taste it? And if it tastes okay, fine. In all the years I've been sniffing and tasting food, nothing really bad ever happened to me. So I may have eaten some expired food and, no big whoop. So just use your head about it. Keep your common sense. And if you're one of these people that you love expiration dates and you're really fanatical about it and you're going to toss the food and you're going to recycle it and you're not going to take your chances, well, there's an app for that. And that is in your iTunes store. It's completely free and it's called Fridgely. And it's kind of awesome. You have a little scanner and you can scan your food. And based on the kind of food it is, it will tell you about when that food is going to expire. Then it will send a reminder to your smartphone. And it will say this food that you bought is about to expire and you need to either eat it or replace it. And so if you love expiration dates and you're, like I say, fanatical about that, this is the app for you. And like I say, it's 100% free and it's kind of fun. So anyway, the expiration dates, they are voluntary and they are just a guide. And so if you are cleaning out your fridge and you're rotating your food storage and whatever, my suggestion would be take everything that has the closest expiration dates and pull those to the front of the shelves or the front of your refrigerator so that you can use those items the first. Even if they expire a little bit, you're still probably fine, but just so that you are in the process of rotating them. Okay, so that's my 2 cents for today. And until we meet again, leave the world a cleaner place than when you found it.